Hey everybody, I'm David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT, and here on Next TMT Talks with my co-founder, Daniel Frankel, talking all things technology, media, and telecom. This week, we'll get into a bungle for Peacock and Apple TV, or whatever Apple's calling its streaming service these days. A gambling scandal hits the NBA again, just as the association tips off a new season with two new streaming partners. How will Adam Silver clean up the mess? And should they move on from their longtime stars to push a new generation of talent who, distressingly, all seem to be from some other country? Speaking of scandals, Jay Penske's trade publications are shaking down a new corner of the entertainment business with fake awards. Who's next? And the sell-off of Warner Brothers Discovery begins in earnest. The auction is official, and supposedly companies are lining up, but I'm not so sure. The UCLA Center for Scholars and Storytellers issued its fourth Teens and Screens report and a related conference this week, letting us know what kids these days really want to see. That and so much more in this week's conversation. So, how are you, Daniel?
Fantastic, Dave. How are you?
Good. I'm all right. So I'm glad to see that you have bounced back from the said bungle that leads off this week's Next TMT newsletter. Apparently, it was quite the harrowing, days-long experience just trying to give money to two of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah, you got to believe, David. In moments like this, you reach deep and try to find something that gets you through it. And
This is what winners do, Daniel. This is what winners do. I'm very proud of you in this regard. But talk a little bit. Let's not completely bore listeners right out of the gate. We can wait for that a little while. But just that process, it sounded like it took several days, and eventually you guys ran up the white flag.
we did. We didn't get to the other side, myself and the Apple folks. Start with the fact that Apple TV and Peacock are kind of in the same boat. They're kind of definitely not afterthoughts, but not primary services. That if you're on a budget, you might churn either one of them. And they're, after summer price increases, they're perhaps more expensive than they should be individually. But they announced this bundle 2 weeks ago. They'd already partnered up within Comcast's pay TV ecosystem. They were part of the Stream Saver. For $15, you got the ad-supported versions of Peacock, Netflix, and Apple TV, or Apple TV Plus, if you want to call it that.
Well, it depends on the day, apparently, but there
We'll
you go.
definitely get to that. So now they announced that you get Apple TV and Peacock for 30 to 40% off, depending on whether you're taking ad-supported or not ad-supported. It's a really good deal. And I jump at it on October 20th, Monday last week, and immediately experienced problems. I signed up through the Apple app thinking the robust technology, combining two billing systems at two companies, would probably reside within Apple. And I was right. It was immediately confusing within the Apple TV app. There's no place to get to Peacock. I go back to Peacock to see if the two sides had reconciled. They had not. I'd paid $17 for my Peacock subscription the day before.
And that was just one you already had that re-upped. So here you are. You're now actually not saving money. You're paying even more money
We are
and
not
not
talking
getting
about
any
the
more.
welfare nations. I
Yeah.
get that. But it is an interesting, because consumers are looking for ways to save money on these things. They've proliferated. They all have some good stuff in them, especially this time of year. So I wanted them both. Ultimately, I go back to, under NBCU Peacock suggestion, I go back to Apple and tried to resolve the situation. We didn't spend 4 or 5 days at it, but we did periodically talk to each other and could never figure out a scenario where I had, for $19.99 a month, Apple TV in Peacock Premium Plus, and my bill was justified on the Peacock end. Never got there. Ultimately, Apple advised me, "Hey, just listen, cancel us, and when your Peacock billing comes up November 20th next month, just cancel it and start anew. That will work." They had
Well, it's something. I mean, so what you're saying is for future people stuck in the same hapless situation you were in, don't spend days talking or emailing or interacting with customer support. Don't sign up for the bundle until you're clear of Peacock
I
and
should
then sign
say
up. Yeah.
I missed an important step, and I can see why I missed that important step. The email you get from Apple or Peacock, depending on what side you sign up on, tells you what to do. It's a confirmation email, and it's not real explicit. You kind of have to read it carefully. But if you click on a link, It connects all the dots and everything kind of works. So they had it set up. But in my case, I had forgotten that my Apple accounts are all connected to this ancient Hotmail account. So I didn't know I got the email. They don't
Yeah.
when you
That
sign up
sounds
for
like the bigger issue is you still have a Hotmail account. I mean, wow.
I never
I've still
cancel
got
it.
an Earthlink account, so I totally sympathize, but still.
I never use it except to look at spam. But anywho, and when I sign up for something, sometimes I give it my Hotmail address, so if it's going to be spammy, so it serves a purpose. Anyway, long story short, I wasn't the only one that fell into this rabbit hole. I found other folks like me on discussion forums. A Apple Care rep I talked to said there are many others like me. The press rep I talked to said, actually, this isn't a big problem for us. We're dealing with some kinks in the system, as there always are, combining two billing systems. But you haven't stumbled onto this major consumer problem. Why I think it's interesting is everybody's, we're going to see more of these things. They
More
are,
of these bundles, you mean?
I do.
Yeah.
I think Apple certainly has the best of intentions. I think it's really hard to walk consumers through these processes, especially adult-minded as I am. It's sort of a learning experience for the industry when you go out to the market, make it really clear step by step what to do next. That's
it's interesting because this is one of the first times that Apple has bundled outside their own exquisitely, constructed internal bundles, other than through the telecom companies who will give you Apple when you buy, they give you Apple TV, the streaming service, when you buy things. And so it's, I guess, not surprising that they haven't quite internalized how you play nice with somebody else, because they're so used to dictating how everybody plays with them. But it is also slightly surprising that it's as clunky as it ended up being. Apple's doing okay with the bundle stuff. They have that whole services division, which is basically about a bunch of bundles that are generating 110 billion or so dollars a year. So they know how to do bundles. Not with anybody that's not also named Apple. Speaking of which, this week, I'm sitting there watching the first World Series game, and up pops a little promo that is weird, and it says, from the creator of Breaking Bad, Ben Skilligan, Pluribus, and then it cuts to a darkened, apparently deserted suburban residential neighborhood where Rhea Seehorn, she most recently, I think, Better Call Saul, yipping like a coyote in the dark, and then smiling sphinx-like as it closes with the name Pluribus. This is designed to intrigue but not enlighten us. You clearly cannot wait. So what'd you think of this? And the weird thing to me was, it's still called it Apple TV Plus. I just thought we had this is Apple's words, a vibrant reset of the brand to just Apple TV, along with the Apple TV service and the app and the interface. So what do I know?
You could show me a trailer, a Vince Gilligan trailer of the erstwhile Kim Wexler slowly over the course of an hour dressing up and making up as a clown. I would appointment TV that shit. I mean, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, I've binged through them both a couple of times. I watch the clips every time they appear on social. I'm a true denizen of that band.
What do they call, people who follow Taylor Swift or Swifties, and there are folks who watch, the Bridgerton folks have a name for their group. What are the Gilligans? I mean, are these the guys that lost way more than a 3-hour cruise to Vince Gilligan's shows?
Well, there's a lot of middle-aged folks like us who are way too weighted down to do anything frivolous like that. But I do think he has a rabid following. And the show debuts November 7th. So if your message to me was, get your petty shit solved by November 7th, get your stuff done, do what you have to do with Apple, it was received. So thank you for bringing that up.
I'm here for you, though I have to say thank you also for including me in the term middle-aged. I have a birthday coming up right after, right before Pluribus debuts, and I'm pretty clear I'm no longer middle-aged, but I'll take it. Here in the extended middle of my existence, I can only
think
hope.
you can expand that kind of wide. So I before you shut that off, it's like the 10-year powertrain warranty on your car. There's still some warranty left.
Still, yeah, there's still some teeth in the gears here. That being said, that brings me to the UCLA Center for Scholars and Storytellers. Their Teens and Screens report, which is a very interesting little quick read, 15 pages, and part of that's just how we did this methodology and all that. But just about what kids these days want. But their term, they interviewed 1,500 adolescents, and they used, and this is biologically backed up by science, but their term for adolescent stems from age 10, when some people, particularly girls, are hitting puberty, until 24, when most people's brains, their prefrontal cortex, is finally no longer soup and kind of settling in with their emotional parts and connecting. And so they've got a super ego to keep from getting crazy. And so it's this 14-year range of people who are termed adolescent. But what they're looking for, most of them are Gen Z. The youngest of them are Gen A. And what they're looking for, which I found interesting, is more romance, or actually not even less romance and sex, more friendships between different genders. They don't really, like particularly younger kids, they get, as Yalda Yules, the head of the center, told me, they have access to way too much, and they're still having a hard time processing all that. So they want simpler stories. They don't want as much fantasy, even in kind of fantasy stories. So they like Wednesday, but it's set in a school, for instance. Huge hit. Stranger Things, also set in a high school in a local neighborhood. Crazy stuff happens on the underneath there. But they like those shows. Those are hugely popular with them. YouTube remains their most trusted outlet, which I found interesting.
Yeah.
And these kids are trying to figure out the world with access to everything. And one of the things that
segment that I really thought interesting, and I hope I don't take this away from you, but filmmakers and series makers, for the most part, recall their own experiences, do either sort of period stuff or fictional stuff based on their own experiences. I was watching, who was the Texas filmmaker who did Everybody Wants Some? He played college baseball. He recounts his.
Well, that wasn't a show I saw, but you being the old ball coach, you would have been all over that.
No, he's Texas. He made
Not Linklater.
It is
Richard Linklater.
It is Richard Linklater. Yeah. Anyway, it's a lighthearted look of his experience as a former Texas college pitcher. It's a freshman entering like the frat house environment.
Right.
And I thought my son is that guy. 40 years later, I thought he would, but it didn't appeal to him at all. He didn't relate to the experience. I mean, yeah, sure, they still drink. They still like girls.
They didn't really have DHs back then, so that's the difference. It threw him off. But
yeah, so just anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But I also thought that was interesting. That too often part of the problem in Hollywood, which the center strives mightily to help rebalance, is that screenwriters who tend to be well out of college, maybe not that much, but enough out that they're writing what they know when they try to write about teenagers. And the kids these days, the experiences they're going through are so different than even 15 years ago, when we didn't have iPhones and we didn't really have YouTube. It was kind of coming up, and didn't really have other social media, and didn't have a whole bunch of other stuff. We still had an East Wing on the White House. That's crazy.
Is that gone?
It's gone, baby. Gone, baby, gone. It's like a Gillian Flynn novel. So, but a very different experience. There are things that are semi-eternal, but there are many things that are not. And screenwriters tend to write what they know, and that isn't what these kids know. And trying to figure out what those things are and work for them now, I think, is a really interesting challenge. Speaking of what they know, David Zaslav at Warner Brothers Discovery knows how to buy and sell stuff. He's now officially put Warner Brothers Discovery on the auction block after three bids from Paramount Skydance. I call them bear hugs. That's the term for making an overwhelming offer for everything that's sort of designed to preempt anybody else jumping in. I think the last one was at something like $25 a share. Larry Ellison says, come on, I'm worth $250 billion. You want to mess with me? And I'll be interested to see how much debt they pile up, who actually buys. One of the things I was questioning, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, who's actually interested? We hear Apple's interested and Amazon's interested and Netflix is interested. But I think maybe if it's available for a reasonable price, they're interested in the studios, maybe the facilities over in Burbank, the beautiful leafy campus, and certainly the library that they can do stuff with. But otherwise, what's in it for them? They don't need CNN. Boy, they really don't need CNN. They don't need HBO or HBO Max for that matter. They certainly don't need, TNT and True TV and all those things. So that leaves only a couple of bidders, I think. I think realistically for everything, if you're trying to sell everything, it's Comcast or clearly Paramount Skydance. Is Brian Roberts going to put up the money? What's your thought on all this?
I mean, first, I don't think the HBO catalog is not worth nothing. I mean, it'll be
That's a catalog. You don't
treated.
need HBO to buy the catalog. You don't need a premium cable network to buy the catalog of all those shows that you've now watched repeatedly over the last 30 years. You don't need HBO to do that. And HBO has licensed that stuff out now profitably
I'm gonna turn this
as
around.
well.
Doesn't it feel like fait accompli to you? Larry Ellison has a lot of money.
So we've been told.
Yeah, the federal government under Donald Trump wants this particular deal to happen. I saw something this week that suggested that there's in the bowels of some library there's incriminating video. I don't think he's touchable, and why it would matter, but I don't know why he wants this particular deal to happen, but he just does. Maybe David Ellison's already proved pliable in terms of CBS News.
Well, he'll do what he needs to do to get the things he wants to get. So he's a clear-eyed deal maker in his father's own footsteps in that regard. It's hard. I'm not going to get real misty-eyed over his sister Megan had put out a bunch of, also a movie producer, put out a bunch of really terrific little films, but also nearly went broke because she took her father's stake and didn't run things quite as business savvily as brother David did. I think he's going to do what he needs to do. Now, if I'm at CNN, I'm worried, right? Regardless, I'm worried because how are you going to get a deal done? And I don't think Comcast with MSNBC even spinning it out to Versant is completely inoculated from Trump's usual ire.
Well, Zaslav has probably been pitched that this is the clearest regulatory path for you. Take this deal. And he collects a lot of shit from the universe, but one thing he seems really good at is negotiating these kinds of deals. He seems like he's in that rare air of folks that have done this before and kind of like it and feel comfortable with it. So
well, he's definitely trying. Well, look, if you get 3 pitches, each of them bidding against themselves, basically, right? I think the first one was 20, then it was like somewhere 22, something like that. Now it's 25. He seems to believe,
30. Yeah,
he seems to believe it's worth 30. But if no one else bids, what do you got? At 25, which is way more than it, which is, by the way, higher than the price it debuted at 3 years ago, and double what it's been for most of the time since then, because it dropped pretty quick. I mean, it's been hovering around 11, 12 bucks a share for most of the time Zaslav's been there. Now, of course, it's all, hyperventilating on the street about opportunities, but it depends on who comes in there. And what's going to be really good for shareholders? Is it going to be selling off just the best bits and then having a steaming pile of some cable nets and $34 billion in leftover debt from the last Warner Brothers deal that led to WBD?
Yeah.
What's it going to be? I don't know. Speaking of scandals, because I like scandals, the NBA debuted this week, tipped off its regular season with 2 new partners. One, NBC and Peacock, your future friend, coming back to NBC without Marv Albert.
And Amazon. And I got to say, I was really fretting about, I think you and I had these discussions, fretting about the transition away from TNT, a longtime partner who did it so well. It's all the same people. Reggie Miller, he's there.
It's all the behind the scenes people too. I mean, it's still Warner Brothers producing it. So
yeah, it was the experience didn't feel really different at all. The basketball was good. The
basketball was good. Everything was fine.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about inside the NBA. which has been on the 40-year run with Turner and TNT and is still being produced by them, still features the big four out front and the very quick and funny support crew that a lot of people that make that show, and they were running it on ESPN. But of course, they're just piping it through. It's not that different than running a Warner Brothers show on Apple TV or Apple TV Plus. No matter the way Apple talks about it, it's kind of the same thing.
So NBCU Peacock debut the season, a doubleheader, Oklahoma City beating, I think it was Dallas, and the Lakers losing to Golden State. And they do
double overtime, by the way, for Oklahoma City Thunder against a suddenly fairly impressive looking Dallas team. A good game, a very good game.
So, OKC got their rings, and the
and here's the other thing, Dan, they got their rings. Three of the players passed puberty.
Yeah, we've talked about how well they're constructed. But
this is a team that is, I think, the second youngest title winner in history, in the league's history. And they also have, in case they have some miracle hole in their roster at midseason, something like 15 first-round draft choices they can trade to fill a hole. So they're doing fine.
So Sam Presti, the GM, is a genius, and they end up, NBC does, with the best audience numbers for opening night since 2010, which is impressive. I mean, dating back to a yesteryear of television.
Yeah, that is a whole different era, right? So that's 15 years ago. Netflix had just switched over to streaming it all and was still figuring out, are we done with DVDs? Are we not? I mean, again, so YouTube was a few years old. It's a whole different era of
if
television.
You're the league and your NBCU and your Amazon, you wake up on Friday morning, you got to be over the moon, but you're not, because Kash Patel has announced that we've arrested the Portland Trail Blazers head coach, Chauncey Billups. Is he in the NBA Hall of Fame? I think
he is an NBA Hall of Fame member. He was an Olympian. He had a long and terrific career, was highly respected, and the head coach was the Portland Trail Blazers.
For sure.
Yeah.
And
went to the University of Colorado. He was a Buffalo back in the day.
Player for the Miami Heat, accused by the Federal Bureau of Investigations of enabling gambling and providing mafia families with information about games, injury reports, etc. And by the end of the day, he had Stephen A. Smith on there talking about how the NBA's in trouble because Donald Trump's coming after him. His why the league is a woke league, and not only the NBA but the WNBA, anybody who had sort of a progressive social agenda during the early part of this decade, you're in trouble.
Or even the early part of the week. I mean, it may be true Trump's going after him, but this stuff is real stuff. I mean, the fact that 4 of the 5 traditional Italian organized crime families of New York are accused in this stuff tells you how dirty it was. They were using, in these high-stakes card shark games, they were using gee whiz kind of technology. Billups was kind of the guy to get folks to show up at the games. I mean, these are two different but related scandals. Gambling is something that basically the league, Adam Silver was pretty aggressive at making it happen after the big Supreme Court case opened up the possibility of state level regulation. Now he's trying to close at least a couple of the windows on the barn after the horse has gotten out, if not the full door, by doing things like getting these companies to stop doing prop bets on individual players who are sort of marginal, like the guys on two-way contracts and stuff, which makes sense, but they should probably just ban prop bets completely. But the problem for that is everybody makes too much money. They're not going to let this stuff go. Now, maybe they'll stop doing the ones who are most vulnerable, like a guy like Rozier, journeyman, not real high up. He's vulnerable. There apparently was, I saw this post, some bettor had 2 years ago saying, got some inside information. Rozier is going to end up sick and pull out before, so he doesn't hit hit the under on his thing 2 years ago. And the line got pulled. The gambling sites found out about it and pulled it. But 2 years ago, some of this stuff was going. So, and was kind of out there a little bit, enough that the gambling sites are like, oh, and because Rozier did all of a sudden have a stomach injury or something right in time, like in the second quarter. So some of this stuff it's definitely been building for a while. It's not just the NBA. We
Yeah,
know
yeah.
the NFL, college, and as this is going on, the
Steven
NHL cuts a
Smith gets
deal.
out the point.
Yeah.
It is bizarre that the director of the FBI with his good eye was up there announcing the arrest. How often do you see that? I mean, it kind of
Well, it's a really high profile thing. There's no way they're going to miss that one. I mean, I'm not going to get. This is a high profile deal. The NBA mob families affecting betting that could affect millions of bettors. I mean, this is not just
well.
some
Also
white
raining on
collar
the league's
crime.
parade, you had Colin Cowherd, a radio host, former ESPN guy of some influence, saying, he was remarking on Michael Jordan's inclusion on the NBC on air team. Get some new stars. Stop promoting LeBron and Steph Curry and Kevin Durant and move on to your new stars. The problem with that is, Shy at Oklahoma City, Luka Doncic,
It's
Nikola Jokic.
Shea, not Shy. He's not shy at all. Shea.
No,
Shea
no, no.
Gilgeous-Alexander.
You shouldn't be shy with The Rock when you have his talents.
Not at all.
The top 5, 6 players in the league, and this is literally, you can name them off. These guys were born in either Europe or Canada. And
yeah. And more importantly, not only were they born somewhere besides the United States, which could be a problem in America firsters, they don't remember when Michael Jordan played basketball. They
he's
weren't
52 years old.
born.
Exactly.
They were not born when Michael's just a little younger than I am, like in a matter of months. And these players, they had a little thing actually to its credit on NBC in the pregame. They had a little thing talking. It's like, I didn't see him play. I wasn't born till 3 years later. It's like, okay, so let's get that guy up and have him say really meaningful things about basketball because he was always that, you know. So, but I mean, at least got a lot to deal with right now, and they've got these new partners, and I think that's going to be fine. I think it'll be interesting to see whether NBC/Peacock drive signups and engagement, which is what they're hoping for.
The right losing its mind over a Puerto Rican Bad
An
Bunny
American citizen who
playing a
happens to
simple
speak mostly
halftime show.
Spanish.
You can't tell me that like the Superbowl halftime production group isn't tuned in to selling albums. The guy's obviously popular here in the United States, and he's in a territory. He's not some foreigner. He kind of lives here, and
right.
And then
he's one of the 2 biggest sellers of records in the last 3 years. After Taylor Swift, he had the biggest tour in history. So there are people who have no problem with him singing mostly in Spanish. They're quite happy to listen to him. And those people will be quite happy to watch the Super Bowl and watch him perform at halftime. Everybody else can just go get drunk like they do anyway. So big deal. Have some more chips and dips, I mean, whatever.
Well, it is worth wondering on the cusp of this deal if there's kind of culture war fecal matter heading the league's way. I mean, it's maybe it's impervious to it. Its core doesn't believe that shit, and it's fine. I don't know, but it needs to draw big audience numbers, and the moment it slips at all, it becomes an issue on X, etc.
Yeah. If it's on X, is it an issue? I think is the other question. I mean, if it becomes increasingly an echo chamber for a certain political bent, then it's really, does that matter? Even MAGA doesn't agree with itself on Epstein files, some of the, bombing the capital of Iran and this nuclear thing, increasing involvement in Ukraine, possibly. I mean, they're not so happy with each other right now. So coming to terms on whether you really want to watch Lee Greenwood at the halftime show of the Super Bowl is probably even more fraught. So I just want to throw that out there as a possibility.
Now, what happened there is I know there was like the right had its own version of the halftime show.
Yeah, they're still talking about it. I'm sure it'll be watched by 5 million people or something.
Is he the headliner, Greenwood, or what's his?
No, but he's an old reliable. God bless the USA. He's been a centerpiece of Trump events for multiple campaigns now. He trots out on stage to sing it, but at 83, he's not quite the virile, versatile performer that he might have once been, or even much of a singer, but he's more of a symbol. I might add, the way Trump is going, not that different from our only president in some ways. So we'll see how that plays out.
we mentioned X, and I'll transition to Elon Musk. I saw a video. He was in Los Angeles here about a month and a half ago for something called the All In Summit. Peter Thiel was there, Mark Benioff. It was like a who's who of conservative folks in tech and their agenda. One of the sessions, Musk actually did a wide ranging interview where he was kind of, you know, kissed up to by the panelists. He appeared on this big, it was this big disjointed giant head on the screen. He wasn't there. But in addition to AI and Tesla and numerous other topics, he discussed Starlink, his low Earth orbit satellite broadband service. And there are real plans. The panelists were like, yeah, Verizon sucks. Elon, you should take it over. And it's kind of, well, thank you. I plan to. That same day, the FCC had forced through CoStar's $17 billion sale of mid-band spectrum to Starlink. So they're asking him kind of, what are you going to do with it? He says in a couple of years, the handsets will be there. The intention is to replace 5G wireless. What I thought was interesting is Netflix has already commissioned a study, and we have that in the newsletters in addition to this video of Musk, looking at the possibility of streaming over low Earth orbit satellite broadband all over the world. The fact that they're commissioning this study makes me think, okay, this is the way it's going to go. This is the political wind. Let's just go along with the program, which is smart, but it's not as fast. The latency isn't as good as 5G internet. We're going to get an inferior product. I mean, some folks in rural areas that don't get 5G internet as well, it's good for them, but
well, look, here's who it'll matter for. It'll matter for the old XM Sirius audience of truckers, however long they last as autonomous trucks start to replace those long haul driving, marine customers, people who are offshore somewhere, folks in the middle of nowhere besides Billy Bob Thornton, other than him, but obviously they're relying on satellite to connect to stuff through T-Mobile. It's not necessarily great when you have other options. And so I'll be interested to see where the penetration rates are in bigger cities or even mid-sized cities. Satellites always got some challenges with all that noise. 5G has its own, but it's going to have to deal with some real competition with hard lines that are strung already in most American cities and most American neighborhoods in American cities. So it'll be fun to watch.
Well, I mean, if you look at 5G internet or mobile internet, the customer satisfaction rankings, and I don't know how much you believe in those, but Verizon, T-Mobile, they do pretty well.
Yeah.
To sit here and tell we all believe they suck. You don't. They're not your dog in the hunt, and it's kind of disillusioning in tech to see how the sausages make sometimes, just because you've sort of access.
Well, it's part of this is it's impossible in a setting like the one you were describing to separate the idolatry, the cult hero status that Elon has in his own echo chamber from a larger reality, which is Tesla's missing, for instance, its delivery dates. I mean, its delivery numbers on most of this year for cars. They had a decent last quarter because the subsidies were going away and everybody was buying a bunch of if they were going to buy them, it's like, I got to buy it now. So that bumped him up. But he's got a real hangover from his Doge days that I think will continue. And I'll be interested to see if that continues to, is he damaged goods? He's the face of Starlink and SpaceX and Tesla. Is that going to impair uptake beyond a certain fanboy level of some of his products going forward? And I think if you have options, particularly better, higher capacity, more reliable, possibly cheaper options, and you don't have to have Elon, you're not helping keep him the richest man in the world, you might take him, possibly.
Well, we'll see. It is interesting. You did tap into something. The amount of hero worship that goes into this side of the equation is striking. There's a segment of that audience that still sees him as sort of superhero and infallible.
Right.
And those numbers, for whatever reason, haven't matriculated them. You see,
right. He's got his following, and I don't know. I think he's not going. I think he's taken a slice off the top that used to be reachable. It's going to be a lot harder to reach now. And if you put on a product that's not as good, that has actual competition outside of those specific use cases I mentioned, I'm sure there's more. He can do well in other countries that have not as much connectivity as well. So there's that.
Speaking of fast internet, I was a participant in a webinar sponsored by Amazon Ads. It was an interesting topic. It was cutting churn in telecom, and they had all these different marketing findings in this 20-slide report. I included a link for the webinar, which is free in the newsletter. And one of the findings was for broadband, fast speeds keeps customers. In TV, it's lack of support that will doom you, and not necessarily frequent blackouts and disruptions.
Right. It's bad customer support when stuff happens. It's like they sort of accept they're okay, stuff happens, but how do you take care of me when something happens? Right. That's really it's a different response about what matters most or what counts as bad. Right. So
in this week, we should see an example of that. YouTube TV, which has slugged it out with NBC, Universal, and you name it lately. I think Fox was one of their carriage combatants at one point, and they got through it. And they have another renewal with Disney. Last time they went to the mat with Disney, it resulted in a 2-week blackout back in 2021. I get YouTube TV. It's a pretty influential service. I think they're up to 10 million subscribers at this point.
It's about right.
Cutting off ESPN and ABC would be a bummer. Got USC Nebraska on Saturday. Not sure where that game is, but
think it's at Nebraska, but beyond that, so you're really not going to want to go to Lincoln to see that game. There's an old stat, and I love this. For the longest time, and Nebraska's had a bumpier last 15 years, but for the longest time when they were competing for national championships every year, and Tom Osborne and Bob Devaney were the coach, and they were just one of the great powers, that in the state of Nebraska, the third largest city after Omaha, Lincoln, Nebraska, was the stadium where the game was being played on game day. That was the third largest city in the entire state, which at that time only
had an innovative platform. They had this, the best training table in all of college football. So they take all this
because the beef is pretty good. Beef is pretty good right there, got to say.
They create all these oversized, strong linemen. And then they come to California and they get their outside speed, their running backs and receivers.
Like everybody else did. Yeah, absolutely. Right.
But Nebraska did it for a long time under Osborne and
Devaney.
Yeah.
Before him. Yeah. But now, not so much. We'll see what Matt Rule does, but it should be an interesting matchup. Maybe you'll get to see it on YouTube TV. Maybe you'll just have to listen on the radio like some old school dude. And
I refuse.
You refuse? Okay.
Not only they got to bring back Tom Kelly, the voice of the Trojans, and maybe we'll talk.
Tom's what now? 95 years old.
Is he still kicking? He was.
I think he's still around. Speaking of still kicking, actually kicking him while they're down. We have talked in the past quite a bit in this outlet and its predecessor with Next TV back in the day about Jay Penske's trade publications, competitors, places that I and you have both worked, and their remarkable vertical integration. First with the Golden Globes, the Golden Globe Production Company, what used to be the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. I think they just call it the Globe and Globe, whatever it is, and the trade publications that write about the Golden Globes, which is Variety, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, IndieWire, Gold Derby, and I'm sure several more that I've forgotten, all of which depend heavily on the awards money that's coming out. And I suspect it's feeling some pinch because of what's going on in Hollywood more generally. There are fewer awards contenders, less money out there. We're about to see some consolidation, which probably means fewer awards.
It all started right around during the pandemic. It was around 2020, and the LA Times hit it first, but Variety followed them aggressively. And it was this Hollywood Foreign Press Association that we've been throwing ads to for all these years. I did a few of those specials, by the way. These people are corrupt. They're racist. They shouldn't be allowed to have an award show. Somebody should take it from them.
Well, the HFPA was an odd organization, but once they took it over, they've had this vertical integration, which has made people pretty uncomfortable. And there was a boycott that shut things down, and got it back up and going. They had decent ratings last year for the Golden Globes, but now they're moving into a new sector, podcasting. For a mere $75,000, we can be honored as a special super duper podcasting service. And that is an award we will be able to take to our graves with us, and probably be actually the first line on our obit that would run in Variety. Right?
Well,
That would be kind of cool.
They are now, it is pretty pay to playish. If you wanted to, into the podcast impact list that their features department makes, you got to come up with some dough. And I used to work in that department, as you know.
And I wrote some stuff when I was at Variety. I wrote some stuff for them.
Right. We collaborated on a few things, as I recall.
Yeah. I mean, it was like one of the best gigs, because you were getting paid to do your daily job, and then the specials guys would come over and say, "Hey, do this story on a thing you already pretty much know. Set up a couple of calls, do a quick interviews, and write a little story, and we'll pay you an extra." What was it? It'd be like $500 or something, like decent money. Yeah.
Yeah, if you
Back
did
in the
too
day.
much of that, Peter Bart would put you in an office somewhere and you get your hand slapped. The department was under Steve Gatos, who
Right.
kind of optimized it, had a lot of innovative ways to package these things.
And he really created that whole thing in the early 90s with Peter.
Yeah,
Really
he did.
created that whole machine.
It was marketing driven, but when I was there, the editors chose all the list, and he was
Right. There was some journalism going on amid the commerce. There's no doubt
right.
about that.
He
Yeah, I
quietly left.
remember I did something on it was an anniversary, like 20th or something, for Lionsgate. And I did like the lead story, and I wrote it straight. I mean, it's like, I wasn't just like puffballing, Feldheimer and Michael
Right.
Burns.
Steve encouraged us to do real journalism, and
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
did
but
real
they were
journalism.
butthurt because
He
it's like, you
quietly
gotta
left.
there were
Nobody has
some
reported
problems.
this. We're the first to report it. He quietly left back in April. I don't know why, but he is gone. He's doing PR now. And suddenly it seems like it's pay to play. I don't philosophically have a complete objection to pay to play in journalism. For this, I think there needs to be a little bit of it in trade publications like this entity that we're trying to create. You've got to create a sustainable ecosystem.
Right.
I think it's always dicey when you're reporting on the sponsors, but I think there needs to be kind of an agreement. If we're going to recognize you and report on you, drop a coin in the system, just put a quarter in. It's real dicey territory. I get it, but something needs to be figured out, because right now a lot of stuff is going underwater.
Yeah.
That said, when you're talking about $75,000 for a package, it's real money, and there's real backlash to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Particularly for like a podcast, the economics are a lot closer to the bone, I think, than they are for a $200 million movie, or even a $20 million movie. Even though there are people making good cash in their podcasts, no doubt, and it might be of appeal to them. But with that, I think we probably ought to wrap this thing up. Follow us at nexttmt.com. If you are not getting the newsletter, please sign up. It's free. Can't beat it. Once a week. A good, lengthy, data rich, lots of stuff in it. Dan and I going back and forth on lots of things happening, and help set the table for your week. And please subscribe. You can also catch us. I think we are back on Spotify as well, so an audio-only version of Next TMT Talks, but you can always find us, subscribe on YouTube. With that, I will wrap this thing up. Thank you, Daniel. I am David Bloom with Next TMT and Next TMT Talks with Daniel Frankel.